Defense?
Matthew Allen.
Jonathan Chavez.
All right. And are both parties ready to proceed? State?
We're ready, Judge.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. All right, can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so that members of both sides can hear you and the court reporter can hear you as well. If you'll state your name for the record.
Jesus Armando Lessa III. Jesus Armando Lessa III.
All right, state.
Thank you, Judge. Hi, Jesus.
How?
How,
Mr. State, please keep your voice up so I don't strain to hear you. Oh, much better.
hi, Jesus. How old are you?
I'm 16.
16. What's your date of birth?
11/23/2007.
Okay. And I want to talk to you about the gaming incident. When was that?
That was February 21st, 2021.
Okay. And where were you on February 21st of 2021?
In my room.
Okay. And who was in your house at that time?
My mom, I believe my dad was working, and then my sister and my brother, and then Raymond Alejandro.
And Raymond Alejandro, is he in this courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe him with an article of clothing?
Gray shirt, collared shirt,
Okay.
green, sorry.
So tell me what happened on February 21st, 2021. What were you doing?
I was playing video games, and I had woken up from can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so you stated that you were playing video games. Where in the house were you playing video games?
In my room.
Okay. And what happened while you were playing video games?
Well, while I was playing video games, Raymond had walked into my room and asked me if I had wanted to play, and I had told him no.
Okay, so at the beginning he was not in your room. It was just you playing video games?
It was just me, yes, sir.
Okay. So he comes into your room and you told him no. What did he do after?
After he had gotten on his phone, and I believe he plugged in his phone, and he had pulled up a pillow and laid on me while I was in my gaming chair.
Okay, and what happened next?
He had so he had a pillow and he was on my lap, and he had rubbed my my private area.
Okay, so you said he was laying down on your lap?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And by laying down, which part of his body was laying down on your lap?
His head.
His head, okay. And where were you?
I was in my gaming chair in my room.
How tall was the chair?
It's about like 2.5 feet, maybe.
From the ground?
Yes. And it's curved, like it was black, curved, and it was kind of like, if you think about it, like a crescent moon, like kind of that shape.
I see.
And yeah, it's low to the ground, and it's kind of like a rocking chair.
Okay. Does it have any legs?
No, sir.
So you said that when he laid his head on your lap, he ended up doing something with his hands?
Yes, sir.
What did he do?
He had rubbed me over the clothes with his hands.
Was it one hand or two hands?
One.
Do you remember which one?
I believe left.
Okay.
He was laying on his right side, and he was to my left.
And you said rubbing. Could you describe the motion using your hands?
Kind of like a can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah, so if you like, can you demonstrate to us how he was rubbing?
He kind of like a, well, it would be in my left hand. Kind of just like, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. How long was he grabbing you?
Probably like 5 minutes, maybe. No, less than that. I I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Was it more than 1 minute?
I would say so, yes.
Was it more than 5 or less than 5 or something else?
Less, maybe.
Okay, so between 1 and 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. What did you do?
I had continued playing and I I had continued playing and then eventually I had gotten up and left.
So you mentioned the word private part. So what do you use your private part for?
What do you mean?
So the private part the place in your body that he touched,
Yes.
you use the word private part to describe it,
Yes, sir.
right? What do you use your private part for?
To urinate.
Okay. Was Mr. Alejandro doing anything else aside from touching you?
No.
Was he saying anything?
No.
Okay, Judge, for the hearing, to scope of this hearing, this is a 3837 portion. Did you want me to elicit testimony for the outcry as well? To
Yes,
take both of them at the same time?
yes.
Okay, so, I want to talk about the other instance, right, the first one.
Yes, sir.
When, when did that, when did that happen?
The 21st night and or the 20th night, sorry, into going into the 21st.
Okay. And what happened, on that instance?
On that instance, I had stayed up a little longer than I should have. I I was playing video games and I didn't want to get caught, so I had pretend I hold on.
Okay, I'm gonna withdraw the question.
Okay,
So regarding these two instances, who was the first adult that you told?
my mother.
Okay, and your mother, on this day, was she over 18 years old?
Yes.
Okay. There was no other person that you told first. Your mom was the first
No,
one.
sir.
Okay. And what did you tell her?
I had pulled her into my room aside alone, and I had told her that Raimi had touched me. Raimi or Raymond.
Did you give her any more details that you remember?
Not that I remember now.
Did mom have any questions when you told her?
I didn't hear that last part.
Did your mom have any questions when you told her?
Sorry, give me a second. I'm thinking. Not that I initially recall.
Defense.
Yes, Judge. Just to clarify as far as the 3837 hearing, because maybe I misunderstood, so the state is, are you guys alleging or trying to, in the guilt innocence phase, get in the incident from February, the two incidents from February 21st, 22nd of 2021?
So for judicial economy, we're doing both hearings, 3837 and the
Right.
Outcry hearing, and this time I elicited the incident that happened that's not in the indictment, which would be under 3837.
All right, so everyone, please remain seated so that the court reporter can hear.
I'm sorry.
And if you all would not speak towards each other,
Sure. Yes.
please speak in the microphone so the court reporter can hear. All right, just give me a moment.
Distracting here. I don't think that.
Do you need that for us, Deputy Lawyer?
No chance. Yeah. let me slow down. Okay, so you're just trying to get it in. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sure.
Here now.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I hear. I hear.
Now, testing.
Yeah, it's still there.
Is it?
All right.
Okay.
All right, so here's the court's question. From the witness testimony, the 3837, what incident are you all alleging falls under 3837?
The gaming incident.
All right. And that is not what's in the indictment, correct?
Correct.
All right. Any other questions, State?
Just a couple of questions really quick.
Is your microphone on?
Now it is, yes. So do you know the address of the house where you're at?
My house?
Yes.
Defense.
Thank you, Judge. Just to clarify, so for lack of a better term, the video game incident, what day did that happen?
The 21st.
February 21st.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What day did the incident at night in your bedroom? What day did that happen?
The night of the 20th.
The night of the 20th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and I had gotten some notes that, and maybe it was eventually, you had told your two friends and a girlfriend, is that right? About what happened, about the incidents.
After I told my mom,
That's what I was gonna ask.
are you asking me, did I
Yes,
tell the people before I told my mom?
correct.
No, sir.
Okay, so any person of any kind, your mother was the first person you told about these incidents?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's all I had, Judge.
No further questions from the state.
All right, you may step down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, the state will call Regina Garza.
All right, have her come in, please. All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. Please have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so that the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
Regina Garza.
State.
Good afternoon, Ms. Garza. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. So I'd like to talk about when you found out about this case. And where were you?
At home.
At home. Where, who was home with you?
Myself, my children, Jesus, Jose, and Ariana, and my husband, and Raymond.
All right. And at some point, did you talk to Jesus?
Yes,
Where were you when you spoke with him?
in his bedroom.
Who was in the bedroom with you?
Just me and him.
Okay. And at that point, what did he, well, how old were you at the time?
Oh,
Let me rephrase. Were you over 18?
yes.
And what did he tell you while you were in the room with him?
That Raymond touched him inappropriately.
Did he describe any other details to you?
Not in the beginning. I had to ask him more to get him to go into more detail.
What
And
did
then he did tell me that he touched him on his penis under his pants.
And did he describe that one instance or did he describe additional ones?
He told me that that happened at 5 a.m. on Sunday. And then later on in the afternoon while he was playing video games.
What did he go into detail about the second instance later on in the afternoon?
And he said that he sat next to him on the floor and he did the same thing.
And the same thing referring to what?
Touched him on his penis.
Did he go into any additional details?
No.
Do you recall giving a statement?
Yes.
Was it a written statement?
Yes.
Would that help refresh your memory if you had that in front of you?
Sure.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, just if I can expedite things, for purposes of the outcry hearing, I think she's established, she's the outcry witness.
All right. So you have no objection to this being the outcry witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other questions for the witness?
Not from the state judge.
All right. Thank you. You may step down. All right. Does anyone want to have any argument with regards to 3837?
Judge, and so that was my confusion. So for the 3837, no, there's no argument. It's the 404B. The state, I believe, is going to try to introduce testimony about an incident that may have happened in, I believe, 2017. And so we would object. I don't think it meets any of the exceptions to 404B.
But under 3837, isn't it admissible at all? You don't think so?
Not on the 3837, I don't believe so.
So state, are you withdrawing it then?
Oh, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
There's two separate, the 3837 is about the gaming incident that we heard testimony on. I apologize, it's not very clear.
All right.
The 2017 incident is a different incident that happened years prior at, I believe, an apartment. There was no police reports or anything filed. That's what I believe the state is trying to introduce, that 2017 incident under 404B. So we are objecting to that.
State?
So with that instance, Judge, it would happen when, it would need to happen whenever the complainant
I
testifies.
can't quite hear you, Counselor.
So that would happen whenever the complainant would testify. We don't anticipate the complainant to testify today. I can approach the court if you like, once I get into the statement, so that way the court can make a decision to give the court context as to whether or not the statement is admissible under 404B.
All right. If parties are asking me whether or not now I can state that this should be admissible with regards to your 404B arguments, I would have to make that decision at the time that I hear more evidence in the case.
Okay.
So before that is elicited from any witness, you all need to approach.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. And then with the 3837, to be clear for the record, everyone is telling me that that is the gaming incident, correct?
That's correct, Judge.
And defense, you have no objection to that being admitted.
No, Your Honor, not to the gaming incident from 2021.
All right. Is there anything else before I bring the jury in?
Nothing from this time.
Judge, can we have just a comment ruling that the mother is the outcry witness?
Yes, defense stipulated that the mother is the outcry witness. So it's stipulated too, and the mother is the outcry witness.
And the court has granted a motion in limine on any other allegations other than those two that were just testified to.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's line the jurors up. And everyone, please remember to speak into the microphones. Everybody is mumbling and talking very quickly or fast and softly. So if you want to be heard by the record, y'all need to speak up.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm good with that. I'm seeing one. Those and then we. Okay. We stick with it.
Your Honor, just can we put something on the record real quick? We,
Just 1 second. Maria, are you ready to place something on the record?
I'm ready, Judge.
Yes.
we are intending on introducing the same records as evidence in this trial. We did not file a business record affidavit, but we do have the custodial records available to testify. I just confirmed with defense, and defense has, my understanding, no objections, and is willing to stipulate to the authenticity of those records.
Correct. No objection to the authenticity. I do have objections about what's in the records, but we can take those up.
All
So
right.
that way we can dismiss our custodial records from testifying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ready, Judge?
Yes, we're ready.
All rise for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And I'm sorry, State Defense, can you come forward? And Maria, this isn't on the record. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you the oath. If you could all raise your right hand for me, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear that in the case of the state of Texas against Raymond Alejandro, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. State.
True bill of indictment. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized and paneled and sworn as such at the January term AD 2022 of the 144th Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term, do present in and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and anterior to the presentment of this indictment. On or about the 21st day of February 2021, Raymond Alejandro, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly engage in sexual contact with Jesus Leza, a male child younger than 17 years old, by touching part of the genitals of Jesus Leza III with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person against the peace and dignity of the state.
How do you plead? All right, State, do you have any opening statements?
We do, Judge.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Betrayal comes from those that you trust the most. And oftentimes, the people that we trust the most are our family. Throughout this case, you're going to hear testimony from Jesus and his family. And they're going to tell you how they let the defendant into their home and into their hearts. And over time, Jesus and his family, they build that trust with the defendant, and ultimately was betrayed the times that he sexually abused Jesus when Jesus was 13 years old. You're going to hear testimony from Regina, Jesus's mother. She is going to tell you about how the defendant would stay with their family in their home months at a time. She's going to tell you about how throughout a couple of years, she entrusted him with her children. But most importantly, she's going to describe to you that horrible day when Jesus disclosed the abuse, and of course, the steps that she took to protect her son as a mother. We also anticipate you hearing testimony from Jose Garza, Regina's husband, and the brother of the defendant, making the defendant the step uncle of Jesus. And Jose is going to tell you about what steps he took to get the defendant out of his home the day that Jesus outcried. You're also going to hear testimony from Deputy Eric Hernandez, who was the deputy that responded to the scene when Regina made the report. You're going to hear testimony from Investigator Rachel Salazar, who is now a sergeant with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office and was the investigator of this case at the time. And she's going to talk to you about the criminal investigation process and how, looking back, she would have done things a little different. You also hear from the SANE nurse. SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nursing Examination, and she's going to talk to you about the purpose of the exam and the process of the examination. And finally, you're going to hear from Jesus, who is now 16 years old and a junior in high school. So you're going to see a 16-year-old junior in high school, and he's going to tell you about what happened when he was 13 years old. And he's going to tell you how the defendant came to his room on more than one occasion. He went up to him and he touched his penis. Now, we anticipate that the testimony that he may have some trouble recalling some small details, but please keep in mind that this offense happened almost 4 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you cannot have betrayal without trust. And in this case, the evidence will show beyond a reasonable doubt that Jesus and his family entrusted the defendant, and that the defendant betrayed their trust and took advantage of a young boy who thought of him as his brother. And at the end of this trial, when you listen to all the testimony that will be presented in this case, the evidence will show beyond a reasonable doubt that the offense was committed, and we're going to ask that you hold Mr. Alejandro responsible for what he did to Jesus. And we're going to ask that you find him guilty. Thank you.
Defense, any opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Consistency matters, details matter, and investigations matter. Talked about that in voir dire. You're going to see it here on display over the next few days. You're going to hear from those witnesses. You're going to hear from some deputies who went out, asked some cursory questions, left, didn't do anything else with the case. Then you're going to hear from a SANE nurse who's going to basically tell you, yep, they said there was an allegation. There's no physical evidence. Everything said is as consistent with something happening as it would be consistent with something not happening. You're going to hear from Jesus. Jesus is going to tell you about some details that he remembers, he doesn't remember, but there's going to be, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of things that he gets inconsistent, okay? And not from, I talked about it once 4 years ago, and now I'm testifying, from talking with deputies, from talking with CPS, from talking with other police, law enforcement, not years after, I'm talking about days after or immediately after. There's going to be inconsistencies, and we know that those are important to corroborate, not only between Jesus, but between Jesus and his mom, between other witnesses. And that's how we determine, that's how you get to determine credibility of these witnesses. And remember, this is a case beyond a reasonable doubt. This isn't, well, maybe it happened, right? We talked about the importance and the highest burden that we have here because we're talking about someone's freedom, someone's liberty. And you're going to hear from investigator now, I guess, Sergeant Salazar. And you're definitely, I hope you get to hear about the things that she should have done differently, because there's a lot of them. And we talked about that is unfair. It's unfair to Jesus, but it's also unfair to Raymond. And you're going to hear that she didn't even know if the DA's office would go forward with the case at one point.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Can we approach?
Yes.
That little round mic, so I can hear you. Okay, I'm ready. Closer to it, please, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll disregard the last statement. Bench, you may proceed.
Thank you. You're gonna hear from Investigator Salazar, and like the state told you, how she wishes she could have done things differently, how she should have done things differently. And at the end of this trial, when you look at this evidence or lack of evidence, and you really sit down and go, all right, do I have enough here? Do I have enough to convict someone of this offense with these inconsistencies, with this investigation, with this testimony? You're not gonna come close to beyond a reasonable doubt. So at the end of this case, I'm gonna ask you to find Raymond not guilty. Thank you.
All right, state, call your first witness.
State calls Regina Garza.
All right, if you can raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
Regina Garza.
Be sure to keep your voice up and speak in the microphone so that members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. State.
Thank you, Judge. Hi, Regina. Do you live in Bear County?
Yes,
How long have you been living here in Bear County?
most of my life.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I'm a LVN
An LVN,
nurse.
a nurse. Okay. So who do you live with?
My husband and my 4 kids.
Okay, what's your husband's name?
Jose Garza.
And you said you have 4 kids. Who are your 4 kids?
Jesus, Jose, Ariana, and Avery.
And what are their ages?
16, 11, 5, and 3.
Okay. Do you share any of those 4 children with Jose?
Yes,
Which ones?
Ariana and Avery.
Okay, Ariana and Avery. So Jose, is that your biological son?
No,
That's Jose's biological son. Okay.
correct.
And then Jesus, who is Jesus' biological father?
Jesus Lessa Jr.
Your son Jesus is the third?
Yes,
Does Jesus Jr., does he still live here in Bear County?
yes.
So when were you married to Jesus Jr.?
Yes.
What year were you married?
2006 to 2011.
Okay. And in 2011, then there was a divorce?
Yeah, correct.
And when was Jesus the third born?
In 2007.
What's his date of birth?
It's November 23rd, 2007.
So whenever you divorced, were you all living together? You and Jesus Jr.?
Before, when we got divorced, I was living with my parents.
Okay. Did Jesus the third end up living with you?
Yes,
And you lived with your parents in San Antonio?
yes.
Okay. And how long were you living with your parents?
For about 2 years.
And then after those 2 years, where did you move to?
I moved into an apartment with an ex-boyfriend.
What year did you move into this apartment?
I want to say in 2012.
And then after 2012, did you stay in that apartment or did you move to a different apartment?
We ended up breaking up and I stayed in the same apartment complex, but got an apartment just for me and Jesus
Okay, and what year was that?
in 2015.
Okay. What's the name of the apartment complex?
Okay,
Can you spell it?
OAKGATE.
Okay, just making sure, just for the court reporter. And how big was so Oakgate Apartments, is that in Bear County?
Yes,
Do you know the address?
3500 Oakgate.
And how big was the apartment?
It was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
And who lived in that apartment?
It was me and Jesus, and then my current husband, he moved in with Jose.
And was that in 2015? Okay, so in 2015, living in this apartment, the 2-bedroom apartment was yourself, Jesus, your husband, your current husband, and his son Jose.
Yes,
4 people.
yes.
Okay, so it was a 2-bedroom apartment, so what were the sleeping arrangements?
Me and my husband slept in one room and Jesus and Jose had the other. But a lot of times Jose would sleep with us because he was still young.
So Jose was 5 years younger than Jesus.
Yes.
So at this point in 2015, how old was Jesus?
7 or 8.
Well, he was born in
Mhm.
2007, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can add 8 years after
Yeah.
that, give or take. And Jose was 5 years younger than Jesus, right? So that would be maybe 3 years old,
Yes.
give or take. Okay.
Mhm.
So really, the one that slept on the room by himself was mainly just Jesus because Jose would sleep with you, all right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you describe Jesus's bedroom?
There was a bunk bed with a twin on top and a full size bottom. And then a dresser with a TV on top. And kid decoration.
Was there anything else with the TV?
There was a DVD player.
Okay, anything else?
No.
So what kind of activities did Jesus like to do as an 8-year-old?
Video games.
Okay, so what kind of video games did he have? Like what kind of console? Yeah,
Mostly, oh, he had an Xbox.
an Xbox.
Mm.
And would he play the Xbox in his room or where would he play?
He would kind of go back and forth, mostly in the living room, but he would take his Xbox to his room.
What kind of games did he play?
Sports games, like Madden, FIFA.
Okay. So you said that Jose moved in 2015. Right? Did y'all get
Yeah.
married?
No,
At what point did you end up meeting his family?
it's pretty much as soon as we started dating,
And that would be in
2015.
Okay. Do you know someone named Raymond Alejandro?
Yes,
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
yes.
Can you describe him with using an article of clothing?
A green t-shirt,
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant. When did you first meet Raymond Alejandro?
2015.
And is he related to Jose?
Correct.
In what way?
He's his younger brother.
So in 2015, when Jose moved into the apartment, how often would you see Raymond Alejandro?
Infrequently. He was still in high school.
Do you know where he was living at the time?
with his mom.
And that would be here in San Antonio?
Yes.
Okay. How was your relationship with Mr. Alejandro at the beginning?
And just in passing, it wasn't. We were friendly, but not that close.
Was it maybe like cordial,
Yeah,
respectful?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did you all stay in the apartment?
until 2019.
Okay. And from 2015 to 2019, did your relationship with Raymond Alejandro change?
Yes.
Okay. At what point?
He didn't have a place to live when his mom didn't have an apartment anymore. So he moved in with us.
What year did he move in with you all?
2017.
And in 2017, so you stated that in 2015 he was still in high school. In 2017, was he still in high school too?
No,
Do you know how old he was in 2017?
I don't.
You know when he graduated from high school?
No.
So when you moved in, what kind of so how were the sleeping arrangements when you moved in?
He would sleep in on the full size bed.
And who would sleep in the twin size bed?
Jesus.
Okay. And of course, Jose would sleep with you all.
Yes.
Okay. Did he have how long did he stay? Would he stay with you all permanently or would he?
He did. He would stay with us for a while and then he would leave. Then he's come back.
When he was staying with y'all, would he work? Would he go to school?
He had multiple jobs, but he didn't really keep one permanently.
So you mentioned that the relationship started changing in 2017, which is when he started staying with you all. How did it change?
We grew extremely close.
Extremely close in what way?
He was like my little brother.
What kind of things would you and him do together?
Everything it felt like.
Can you give us some examples?
Grocery shopping, cleaning the house, cooking, helping taking care of kids.
And at this point, you only had 2 kids at the time, right?
Yes.
How long or how much time would you spend with Mr. Alejandro?
A lot of time. If I wasn't at work, if I was at home, he was there.
What kind of impact did he have in you around this time?
Sometimes it felt like he was all I had.
Was he? And you can take a minute if you like. Where was Jose around this time? Was he still living there?
Yes.
What does he do for a living?
He's a police officer.
And he was a police officer at the time?
Correct.
And what were his shifts like?
They're all over the place.
Irregular?
Yeah.
Does that include night shifts as well?
Yes.
So who would help you with taking the kids to school?
It was mostly me. I had to pick up and drop off, but at the time Jose was not in daycare. So Raymond would help watch Jose.
And how long would Raymond stay with Jose in the apartment?
All day, all the time.
So this relationship changed in a good way in 2017.
Yes,
So then you mentioned that you were in the apartment in up to 2019.
yes.
Okay, and what happened in 2019?
We bought a house,
Who's we?
me and my husband.
And that house, is that in Bear County?
Yes,
Are you currently still living in that house?
yes.
Do you remember the month when you bought the house?
In February,
Can you describe the house? How big is the house?
1,900 square feet. It's 4 bedroom, 2 bath.
Were you all still a family of four when you moved into the house?
Yes,
What about Raymond, Mr. Alejandro? Was he living with you all still in the apartment and then moved into the house, or what happened to him at the time?
no, he wasn't with us at the time.
So then, when you were at the house, I believe, so you mentioned you have Ariana, right?
Yes, in October of 2019.
She's a 5-year-old, so she was born October of 2019. So you
Yeah.
were pregnant when you moved into the house?
Yes,
Okay. Between February and October of 2019, did Mr. Alejandro ever come back to live with you all again?
yes.
And what were the arrangements, the sleeping arrangements when he moved or when he would go into the house?
Sometimes he would sleep on the couch or he would sleep on the full-size bed with Jose.
So there's 4 bedrooms, right? So who's who? Who has?
Jose has his own bedroom, Jesus has his own, Ariana had her own, and then we had our own.
So why would Mr. Alejandro sleep with Jose?
Because it was a full-size bed.
So Jose had the full-size bed.
Yes,
What about Jesus?
he had a twin. He had the bunk bed in the beginning,
So what do you mean by the bunk bed?
the top of the bunk bed in his
You-
room.
You split the bunk beds?
Yes,
Okay. And in 2019, or actually, okay, so I want to talk about what happened on February 22nd of 2021. Do you remember that day?
yes.
Tell me what happened. Where were you coming from?
I came from work.
From your nursing job?
Yes,
Okay. And where did you go?
when I first came in,
Yeah, so you're coming from work, but where did you go?
home.
Home. And what happened when you got home? What time
Uh,
was it?
I don't remember, but normally I get home around
5 a.m. or p.m.?
PM.
What happened when you got home at 5 p.m.?
Um, I went to the bathroom and then I came out and Jesus was home. And my husband had told me that he seemed upset. So I went to go talk to him in his room.
So on February 22nd of 2021, do you know how old Jesus would have been on that day?
Well,
Did you say 12?
yes,
Okay. You want me to approach?
Yes.
Show you Mark, State's Exhibit 1. You recognize this?
Yes,
Can you please tell the court what this is?
a picture of Jesus at 12.
And does this picture fairly and accurately depict what Jesus looked like at that age?
Yes,
Your Honor, at this time, we move to admit State's Exhibit 1.
Object to relevance.
All right. State relevance.
This is the complainant in this case, Judge, right around the time when the outcry is about to happen. So it gives the jury an illustration as to how that's actually happened.
All right, objection is overruled. State's exhibit number 1 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, sir. Permission to publish?
Granted.
So you stated that you went to go talk to Jesus when you got there.
yes.
Did you notice anything about Jesus?
He seemed visually upset. He had his hoodie over his head, his headphones on.
And where was he?
In his bedroom.
Was he by himself?
Yes.
What did you do?
When I walked in, he told me, I asked him what's wrong, and he told me I needed to sit down.
Was there anybody else in the room?
No,
And did you sit down?
yes.
What happened?
He told me that Raymond inappropriately touched him.
What was his demeanor when he was telling you this?
Scared.
What did you do? What did you do next? When he told, actually, let me withdraw the question. When he told you this, what was going through your mind?
My mind was racing, and my heart dropped, and I asked him exactly what do you mean? Like, how?
So you asked to clarify?
Yes.
Did he give you any clarification?
He said that he touched him under his shorts while he was sleeping and touched his penis.
Did he say when?
He said Sunday morning.
Did he say when exactly on Sunday morning?
I'm sorry.
Did he say when exactly on Sunday morning?
I think around 5 in the morning.
Did he say anything else?
He said he did it for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Did you ask any more questions?
No.
Is that the only time that he talked about?
No.
What else did he say?
He said that he did it again that afternoon while he was playing video games.
What day out of the week was this
That he told me or that it happened?
that he told you?
It was a Monday.
And which Sunday was he referring to?
The day before.
So he said that it also happened on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon?
Both.
And what happened on Sunday afternoon? Did he say anything?
He said he was playing video games on his gaming chair and he came to come sit next to him and started touching him again
And where did he touch him?
on his penis.
Did he say if it was over or under the clothing?
I don't remember that time.
Did he say how long that happened on the second instance?
I don't remember.
So of course, when you were learning about this, what did you do next?
I called my husband to come to his room. My Jesus. He was in the living room. Their daughter.
Was there anyone else in the house?
Yes.
Who else?
Raymond.
Where was he?
Sitting at the island.
Kitchen island?
Yes.
So you called your husband into Jesus's room, and what happened next?
I told him that Jesus had something to tell him.
And then?
He told him that Raymond had touched him.
What did you do after?
Um, we went to our bedroom,
Who's we?
me and my husband.
And what happened in the bedroom?
I told him he needed to get him the fuck out of our house.
Are you referring to
Right.
Mr. Alejandro? To your knowledge, what did your husband do?
He stayed in the room, but he called his brother, his older brother,
Where did you go?
back with Jesus in his room.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Alejandro stay in the house?
He did. Up until a certain point, and then he walked out.
After he walked out, did you ever see him again?
No,
What did you do after he left?
called Bear County Sheriff's.
And you made the report?
Yeah.
And this was that same day that you learned about this information?
Yes.
So when you called the police, um, did you provide them all the information that you had?
Yes.
And I'm guessing they provide you with the police report number
Yes.
to follow up?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens after?
Well, they talked to the investigator and they had said,
Okay, well, just let me caution you, you can't tell me what they tell you, okay?
oh, okay.
So, but just tell me what happened. Did you end up doing anything additional after you made the
Yes.
report? What did you do?
We took him to go get a SANE exam
Okay, and where was that at?
at Christus.
Santa Rosa?
Yes, children's,
Do you know when you took them?
on Wednesday.
And then after you took them to Santa Rosa, did you take them anywhere else?
A child safe.
To your knowledge, what happened at child safe?
Jesus told them what happened.
Was he interviewed?
Yes.
I want to talk about the phone plan. Who was part of your phone plan? Your cell phone plan?
Raymond was a part of our phone plan.
So how many phones do y'all have as part of a family?
At the time, we
Yes.
had 4, 5.
And who were they?
Me, my husband, my grandmother, Raymond, and Jesus, I think.
So after you made the report, whatever happened to that phone plan?
We kept it on because it was still under a contract.
So you were still paying for the phone of Mr. Alejandro?
Yes,
Did you know his phone number?
yes.
When he left the house, do you know where he left to?
I don't know.
Defense.
Thank you. Ms. Garza, going to the home that you're currently living in, if you could, to your best description, tell me, I guess, where Jesus's room is compared to the rest of the rooms.
Our house is more rectangular, long ways. When you walk in the front door, there's a hallway to the left. And the front room is Jose. There's a bathroom, then Jesus's room. Then you go, there's another hallway, and it's the living room, dining room, kitchen, it's open. And Ariana's room on the left, and then in the back is the master bedroom.
Okay, so to get to the master bedroom, you have to walk past the rest of the rooms?
Yes,
Okay, and but is it a long hallway, I guess, for the rooms?
it's like separated,
Okay,
but it's a hallway to go to the living room and dining room.
okay,
And then it's a small hallway between the two boys' rooms.
all right. So you said Jesus has his own room, correct?
Yes,
All right. And then when Raymond would stay at the house, he would normally stay on the couch, or sometimes he would sleep with your youngest son.
correct.
All right. And obviously it wasn't unusual for Raymond to stay at your house, right?
No,
When he wasn't staying at your house, was he normally at his mom's?
yes,
And so was there even a time, I guess, during the winter cold where you guys had to stay in Raymond's room at his mom's house?
yes,
Okay. And that was close in time, in proximity to these incidents we're talking about, right?
it was before.
Before. All right. And you're a nurse, right?
Yes,
Okay, so obviously Raymond would stay at the house, and obviously he would get a place to stay, and then he would help out with the kids, is that right?
yes,
And so that would be Jesus and Joey and Ariana?
yes,
All right. And would he, I guess, do activities with the kids?
yeah,
Okay, so he would hang out with Jesus and Joey and Ariana.
yes,
All right. And that was because, in part, you're working as a nurse, right?
yes,
And then your husband is working as a police officer.
yes.
Okay. Now, going to that Monday, so you remember the outcry, or when Jesus told you what happened, that was on a Monday, right?
Yes,
Okay, so the 5 a.m. incident, we're talking about Saturday night leading into Sunday, is that right?
yes,
All right. You don't remember telling Jesus that he had a certain bedtime on Saturdays or anything during that time, right?
no,
Okay. And so he gets home, and you and your husband notice that he's upset.
yes,
Okay, he goes to his room, and you take the initiative to go into Jesus's room to speak to him, right?
yes,
All right. So you're in there, and he tells you, I guess, generally Raymond touched him inappropriately. Is that right?
yes,
And then you, obviously being concerned, you ask him follow-up questions to get more details.
yes,
Okay, and then that's when he starts giving you the other details that you testified to, right?
yes,
Now, then you and your husband, I guess, go to your bed, you pass Raymond and you go to your bedroom,
yes,
and then that's when you're speaking to your husband about how to make sure that obviously Raymond can't stay there anymore, right?
yeah,
Okay. And then eventually Raymond's other older brother, Angel, comes to pick him up, right?
yes,
All right. Now, going back to when Jesus is describing some of the incidents, the one that happened at 5 a.m. on Sunday, he just told you he touched him inappropriately underneath his shorts. Is that fair?
yes,
All right. And it lasted about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yes,
And then the next day or next afternoon is when he said that he was playing video games and Raymond came and sat next to him on the floor.
yes.
And then you don't remember if he gave more details than that, is that right?
I don't remember.
Okay, fair enough. Now, eventually deputies come to your house, right?
Yes,
And you guys are outside the house when you're speaking to the deputies?
yes,
And Jesus talks to them for a little bit, and then I think he's playing basketball while you're talking to the deputies, right?
I don't remember what Jesus was doing.
Okay. They give you the police report number, and I guess they tell you an investigator is gonna follow up.
Yes,
Now, you do give a written statement later on, is that fair?
yes,
So this happened February 20th, 21st, 22nd of 2021, right?
yes.
Your written statement, that follow-up comes May 11th of 2021. Does that sound accurate?
I don't remember.
Okay, if that's what's written on your statement, would that be accurate?
Yes,
All right. So about 3 months, right?
yes.
In your follow-up, or even the deputies, did they ask about identifying information for Raymond?
They asked for a phone number.
Okay.
And his name
And
and
it-
where we would think he would go.
Okay. So did you provide them that phone number?
I did.
Okay. And you provided Raymond's actual phone number, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then you said where you thought he would go. I mean, you stayed at his mom's house, so you're pretty sure he's gonna stay at his mom's, right?
yes.
So you provided that address, right?
I don't know the address.
Okay, I mean, did you know how to get there, or your husband knows how to get there, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so if the deputies or the police want to go check his mom's house, you either told them or would have been able to tell them how to get to his mother's house.
I would have told them.
Okay, they didn't ask?
No, they didn't ask me how to get there.
They didn't ask for an address?
They asked for the address, but we stated we didn't know the exact address.
Okay. Did they ask for his mom's phone number?
I don't remember that.
And then obviously it's a family, so Angel came and picked him up. So you guys have Angel's contact information as well, right?
Yes,
Because presumably Angel took him to wherever he was gonna go stay.
yes.
Did they ask for Angel's information?
I don't remember.
It's fair to say that it's either you or someone in your family would have known Raymond's phone number and where to locate him. Is that fair?
Yes,
And so you wouldn't have told the detective or investigator or anyone else, I don't know his phone number or how to get a hold of him, right? Because you did.
yeah.
I'll pass a witness.
Briefly, Judge. Regina, regarding the bedtime, Jesus' bedtime, you said that he doesn't have one?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, what time does he normally go to sleep? That you know of,
Then or now?
then,
Then I think he would stay up kind of late.
okay, and how would that make you feel?
Oh, I would get upset at him if I found him awake at past midnight.
What do you mean by upset?
Like,
Like, would you get
Like-
grounded or would you just yell at him and raise your voice?
no, yeah, I would just raise my voice, I guess.
And of course, he wouldn't like that.
Oh, yeah, no,
Would he get scared?
yeah,
Um, did you say past midnight? If you catch him past midnight or,
yes.
okay. What does he normally do in his room when he's not playing video games?
Oh, he's on his phone.
Okay. Does he have a TV in the room?
Yeah,
And does the TV have any access to cable or the internet or?
oh, the internet, the Xbox.
So when you stated earlier about what Jesus had told you about being touched inappropriately, did he specify what he meant by that?
He did.
Okay, and just to clarify that, what did he say?
He masturbated him.
Okay, but did he say that?
He did.
Okay, you want me to approach?
Yes.
I'm gonna show you this.
Mhm.
Do you recognize this?
Yeah.
What is this?
My statement.
Okay, feel free to review it, to refresh your recollection, but do not read from it directly, so it be hearsay, okay?
Mhm.
So I know that sometimes we may think of certain things without actually the actual word, but is there anywhere in your statement where that is mentioned?
It does not.
Okay. Instead, what words do you use to describe that?
He touched him for 10 to 15 minutes.
With what?
It doesn't say.
Okay, well, did he
Where?
use
His hand,
his hand? Okay. And he touched where?
his
His
penis.
penis, okay. So regarding the information for Mr. Alejandro, you mentioned that you didn't know his mom's address.
Correct.
Why? Is it a new address or why is it that you don't know?
We don't go over there often.
Okay, so but do you know how to get there?
Maybe.
Okay. Who normally drives when you go over there, you or your husband?
Oh, my husband.
At any point after, so you stated right now on cross-examination that the older brother came and picked Mr. Alejandro up.
Yes.
Is that something that you know for sure, or is that something that you may have been told?
That's what I was told. I didn't witness it happen.
Okay. But you know for a fact that he wasn't there when you reported it to the police.
Yes.
Okay. From the moment that he left, you stated that you've never seen him again, right?
Yes.
Has he had any contact with you?
No.
Has he tried calling you,
No.
texting you?
No.
What about messaging you through social media?
No.
So nothing really was discussed or addressed.
No.
Did you want to?
No.
No further questions.
Defense.
No further questions.
All right, is this witness excused?
We are gonna have her hold subject to recall.
All right, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, state calls Jose Garza.
All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can have a seat. But you'll make sure you keep your voice up so members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
My name is Jose Herman Garza Jr.
State.
Good afternoon, Mr. Garza. How are you doing?
Doing good, ma'am. How about yourself?
Doing good, thank you. A moment to set up. Okay. Mr. Garza, how do you know the defendant?
Dependent, actually, my younger brother,
And what is his name?
Raymond Alejandro.
And can you point him out in the courtroom?
Wearing a green long sleeve collared shirt.
Please have the record reflect he's identified the defendant. I want to take you back to 2021. At that time, were you close with your brother?
Yes.
Where was he living?
He was living with us, me and my family.
Who all was living in that household?
It was him, my wife, our 3-year or our 5-year-old daughter, Jose, and Jesus.
And was that at I don't know the specific address, but was it here in Bear County?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to talk about, I guess, in 2021, was there ever a time that you asked him to leave your home?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about that. What were you doing on that day?
I want to say I was working nights, so I was actually home sleeping
Where were you?
in our master bedroom.
Was there anyone with you?
At that time, no.
Who was in the household at that time?
Been so long, I don't remember. I know, I think Jose was home, from school, and I think Raymond was there as well.
Was Jesus there?
I think he wasn't there yet, but he should have been, he would be getting there. Or yes, he was there after I had, if I talking about the time that I told him to leave, he was, yes, Jesus was there.
So we're talking about that time. Do you remember what month that was?
No, ma'am.
Has it been a while?
Yes, ma'am.
So Jesus was there, you were there, Jose was there, and did you say your daughter Ariana was there?
Yes, she's was there with my wife.
Can you tell us what sparked your desire to get him out of your home?
An incident occurred with my oldest Jesus. My wife was in the room with talking to him. She called me over there.
When she called you over there, what was her demeanor like?
Very upset.
How did you tell she was upset?
Known her for a few years already. We had been together, so we were able to tell when one's upset and one's their normal self.
Okay. Since the jury doesn't know her, was she exhibiting any signs that indicated she was upset?
Yes, you can just tell in her voice. She was just very angry. You can tell she's very disturbed about something.
And did she tell you to do anything?
When she had called me to the room and I was explained everything, we had walked back to my room and we had discussed what the outcome was going to be.
What was that outcome?
She had asked me to get him out of our house. And then at that point, that's when I called my older brother.
Okay, so when she asked you to get him out of your house, who was she referring to?
My brother Raymond.
And how did she ask you? What was her emotional state when she asked you?
Very angry. cussing. She was just very distraught,
How are you feeling at this time?
angry, confused, a lot of emotions going through my mind.
You mentioned you called your brother.
Yes.
What was the purpose of you calling your brother?
She wanted him out of my house or out of our house. And I knew my brother was down the road so that he can come and get him out of the house.
What was your emotional state when you called your brother?
Very angry, upset. And my brother, when I spoke to him over the phone, he got that emotion out of me and understood that it was something that needed to get done.
And when you say that, are you talking about him needing to pick up the defendant?
Yes,
That needed to get done?
yes.
Was it very common for you to call him that upset?
No, no, I'm not a person that gets upset very easily. So when I called him in that state, it was a very big deal.
What was his response to you telling him to come pick him up?
I didn't ask any questions. He just said, I'm on my way.
How long until he arrived at the house, would you say?
I couldn't give you an exact time frame. I know it was roughly around 30 minutes.
During that time, where was the defendant?
In the living room.
Did you have any interaction with him?
I know he had came to my room because Regina had went back to our son's room, and he had asked me what's going on. I just told him I don't want to talk about it. Just please, like, just get your stuff and you need to leave.
I'm gonna back up here. So at some point, Regina left the master bedroom.
Yes, and had went back to Jesus's room.
So at that time, is it just you in the master bedroom?
Yes.
When the defendant came to you, how did he enter the room?
Was kind of confused about why I was telling him. He was confused about what I was telling him, what was going on, and why I was telling him to leave.
So after you told him to pack up his stuff and get out, what was his reaction?
He just kind of told me, okay. He went and got whatever I guess he could and went outside.
How long had he been staying with you at this point?
It was on and off. It was never really a long period of time. He'd just kind of come and go. If he needed a place to stay, he was more than welcome to stay at our house.
That he just said, okay, and packed up his stuff and left?
Yes.
Do you know if your brother came to pick him up?
Yes.
At any time after the defendant left your house, did you learn where he went?
I had assumed my mom's house.
And did you know your mother's address at the time?
I didn't. I had it on GPS. Just because it was a new residence to her. I didn't remember it, so every time we used to go there, I would use GPS, and at that time I was working a lot, so that address had already left.
Like left
It
your
wasn't.
history?
Yeah, it had left my history.
And I apologize, I spoke over you, so I'll
That'd be
try
fine.
not to do that. Okay. So you said, I'm gonna back up, you said your mother had just relocated,
Yes.
and did you know that address?
Not off the top of my mind.
And it was no longer in your GPS history?
Correct.
Okay. Why did you call your brother to come pick up the defendant instead of just letting him stay until the police arrived?
Objection, relevance.
What is the relevance?
Your Honor, I'm just eliciting testimony on how they reacted and how the police got involved and why the defendant left.
All right, objection overruled. You can answer the question.
Yes, ma'am. At that point, I was going based off of what my wife has said and uh, not by what I do for a living.
Were you angry?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you concerned about any danger if he stayed?
Um, there was a possibility. My house is full of weapons, so yes.
Were you trying to avoid any confrontation?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you heard from the defendant since you asked him to leave?
Um, I want to say there was one time and it was just about the phone bill. But other than that, no, man.
I want to back up to earlier when Regina got home. Had you noticed anything about Jesus's behavior?
Um, that day, I want to say I was already awake because I had to pick up Jose from school. So when he had got home, he was a little distraught.
What do you mean distraught?
Um, he wasn't his normal self. He would usually come in and be kind of talkative. That day he came in and went straight to his room, and I kind of asked, "Hey, what's going on?" And he just kind of shrugged me off and went to his room.
Do you recall what he was wearing or anything?
No, ma'am.
But you could tell he was upset.
Yes.
Connor, this time I'll pass the witness.
Defense.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Garza, right?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Garza, so that day, that Monday, you were in your room, I guess resting, you had a long day at work,
Yes.
okay. And then Regina, your wife, goes to check on Jesus to go figure out what's going on, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Regina actually comes back to tell you what's going on, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So she tells you what's going on, and then at that point, do both of you then go to Jesus's room, or she goes back and you start calling your brother?
Yeah. She goes back to Jesus' room, and I stay in my master bedroom and call my
Okay.
older brother.
Okay, so Regina tells you what's going on, you immediately start on calling your brother Angel, is that right?
Yes.
All right. And Angel you said Angel can tell something's up, something is wrong, correct?
Yes.
And I guess in your family, between your brothers, at least prior to this, I mean, when one of you asks for something, the other one pretty much does it. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. So Angel, you asked something of Angel, Angel went and did it, right?
Yes.
Now, when and Regina comes from Jesus's room and goes back, and you can see she's visibly upset and angry, right?
Yes.
All right. And so at some point, Raymond comes to your room when it's just you, and the two of you talk, right?
Yes.
And you don't remember if he asked why he needed to leave, but you definitely know that you didn't tell him any details about what was going on. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. And that he came in, he was in a state of confusion. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
All right. But again, you tell him he's got to leave, and then obviously Angel tells him, "Hey, I'm picking up," and Raymond leaves, right?
Yes. Correct.
All right. And now you didn't know originally or immediately you didn't know where Angel would take Raymond, but later off you did get confirmation that Raymond went to his mom's house, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then the police are called and 2 Bexar County deputies come out to your house.
Correct.
Did you speak to the deputies or was it more Regina and Jesus?
It was more Regina and Jesus.
Okay. Did they talk to you at all or get your information?
From my recollection, no. I was just there. We talked a little bit, but it was not anything to do with the case.
Okay. Did you help them give identifying information about Raymond?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be like a date of birth, a phone number? Is that fair?
Yes, the information I did have on him, yes.
Okay. And you said you didn't have the exact address, but you guys would have let them know, hey, he's at my mom's, I don't know the exact address, I know how to get there.
Correct.
Okay. And so obviously Angel in the very beginning gets put in the middle of this. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it's taken a toll and it's divided your family.
Correct.
And so it's obviously been difficult for your family to navigate as far as everything going on. Is that fair?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness.
State.
Just briefly, Your Honor, if I may have 1 moment. Mr. Garza, just briefly, after Regina, I'm sorry, spoke with Jesus in his bedroom, did you go to Jesus' bedroom with Regina?
She went over to his room. She had called me over there to his room. That's when I found out what happened.
Okay, I just
Um,
wanted to clear that
and
up.
that's when we went to our master bedroom just to talk.
Thank you. And you stayed in the master bedroom from then on and called your brother?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense.
Just to clear up, because you told me something different. You said Regina came to you to the master bedroom to tell you what was going on. You remember saying that?
Yes. So
Well, do you remember telling me that?
yes.
Okay, so did Regina call you to Jesus's room or did Regina come to your room?
So Regina called me to Jesus' room, which then after we spoke, we walked over to our master bedroom and finished our conversation there.
Okay, and you said when you were calling Angel, and talking about the deputies, you were going based off what Regina had told you, right?
When I spoke to Angel,
Yes, that you're going off of what Regina had told you. Is that fair?
yes.
Okay, and so that's because Regina told you about what was going on. That's how you heard about it, right?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Is this witness excused?
Subject to recall, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
All right, thank you.
State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, State calls Deputy Eric Hernandez.
And ladies and gentlemen, the jury, if you ever need a recess, just let me know. If you'll just do the break sign, I'll see you. Does anyone need a recess before this witness? All right. You take a seat here, please. All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand if you'll make sure you keep your voice up so everyone can hear.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
you'll state your name for the record.
My name is Eric Hernandez.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Deputy Hernandez. Can you tell us how you are employed?
I'm employed at the Bexar County Sheriff's Office as a law enforcement patrol deputy.
And how long have you been a deputy?
I've been a deputy for a little over 10.5 years now.
And are there any requirements or training to become a deputy?
Yes, ma'am. You have to go to the patrol school and the detention academy. And then once you graduate the patrol school, you'll be afforded the opportunity to go to patrol.
How long is the patrol school and the academy?
The academy, the Peace Officer License Academy is about 9 months. After that, we go to the patrol school, which is about 3.5 to 4 months long.
And after that, are you just, do you just go out on the street by yourself, or is there any on-the-job training?
No, we do an on-the-job training for about 12 weeks or so with a training officer that guides us throughout that 12 weeks.
And when you say training officer that guides you, what do you mean?
It's a usually a veteran officer who's been on patrol a lot longer, obviously, than I have. And throughout that time, he's just monitoring me, guiding me, and helping me, assisting me throughout the time I'm training.
So you said you've been with Bexar County Sheriff's Office for about 10.5 years, did I hear that correctly?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
That whole time, have you been a deputy, or were you with a different division?
I worked in the jail for about 5.5, 6 years or so, and then the rest of that time has been on patrol.
So if I understand correctly, you worked in the jail and then you did the training and the patrol school and academy to become a deputy.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
So what is your current assignment with BCF or Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
Currently, I'm assigned to the East Patrol on first shift.
And what does that entail? Like, what are your duties?
My duties are just patrolling the assigned districts, answering dispatch calls for severity of different incidents throughout the day.
Is it fair to say that when someone calls 911 and needs police, if they're in your district, you would be dispatched?
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to direct your attention to this case specifically. Do you recall what date you were dispatched?
I don't remember the exact date, no, ma'am.
Would it help refresh your memory if you had a copy of your report in front of you?
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
It's our incident report.
Okay, if you could just refresh your memory, just don't read directly from it.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall the date that you reported?
It says February the 22nd.
Just on the off chance, do you happen to remember what day of the week that was?
I do not, I'm sorry.
That's okay. What were you dispatched for?
I was dispatched for a call for a report of a sexual offense.
And the location that you were dispatched, was that here in Bexar County?
Yes, it was.
And were you dispatched by yourself, or did you have any sort of partner with you, or did you have anyone with you?
At this time, I was still training, so I had my training partner with me.
And who was on scene? Well, actually, let me back up. So you're still training, you said it was 12 weeks long, the field training officer is with you?
Yes, ma'am.
How long had you been with him at this point?
We do 2 phases. First phase is six weeks, and then the second phase is another 6 weeks. So I was on my second phase. I don't know exactly what week it was, but sometime around the second phase.
All right. So when you get to the scene, who was there?
As I recall, on my arrival, I observed the caller, I believe was the mom, the father, and then the child there.
Did you identify everyone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And who were those people, if you could tell us?
Identified the mom, I'm sorry, as Regina Garza,
And the,
and the juvenile of Jesus Leza.
and what did you do first when you got on scene?
I introduced myself and asked Regina if they were the callers who had called, and then asked them what had happened.
And when you're talking to them about what happened, what was Regina's demeanor like?
She was a little quiet, a little standoffish, a little bit. I didn't see anything else from that.
And what about Jesus?
As when speaking to him, he appeared a little bit standoffish, shy, embarrassed a little bit.
And what is the purpose of you speaking with them at this point?
I'm just trying to gather the information that they reported at that time, and trying to figure out what had happened, what the reason was for the call.
And did you speak to them alone or separately?
I spoke to, I believe, all of them together.
And how old was Jesus at this time?
I do not recall, I'm sorry.
Was he a juvenile?
He was a juvenile.
And when you speak with juveniles, is it common to have a parent or guardian with them?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
So at some point, did you determine what went on?
Yes, when Regina informed me of what had happened, then I continued further on with the investigation.
And what do you mean by that? What were your next steps after talking with Regina and Jesus?
In order to determine what had happened, I had to speak with the juvenile also to figure out what he reported to his mother and what she was reporting to me.
And what steps do you take after speaking with them?
Once we gather all the information, we have to contact our supervisor. And then once our supervisor is notified, he would give the authority to contact an investigator.
So you contact a supervisor to see if you even need an investigator.
That's correct, yes.
And I just want to highlight that for a moment. So what is the difference between you as a patrol deputy and an investigator?
The difference is a rank structure. They attest to promote to an investigator, which would be considered like a corporal, but right before a sergeant.
And what are your different duties during a call, for instance, or a subsequent investigation?
For myself and an investigator, well, we handle the initial reports from the calls that take place initially, and the investigator handles the back end if anything is determined that they need to look into.
And so when you're on the scene, do you do stuff like you yourself, do you do stuff like evidence collection or taking formal statements?
I do not, no ma'am.
Would that be more on the investigative side?
Yes, it would.
After you speak with your investigator or your supervisor, what's your role?
Once I've passed all the information to them, my role is just to inform the caller of what's going to happen next. That's pretty much it.
And when you say what happens next, what do you mean?
It's just that the investigator would be in contact with them for follow-up questions if they had any.
And in a case like this, in cases of like a sexual nature, do you talk to them about any further steps they may need to take?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes if the investigator passes information to me, I pass it on to them.
And what type of things would they need to follow up with?
Hospital visits, phone numbers, or other resources.
Those other resources, would that include like child safe?
There's just a number to the child safe investigator would probably be the most.
And you said hospital, do you mean a SANE exam?
I do mean a SANE exam.
When you were on scene, did you try to get information for the accused at this point?
I think we tried to get his first and last name and possibly his whereabouts and our home address.
And were you able to obtain his first and last name?
Yes, we were.
Were you able to obtain his date of birth?
I don't recall exactly if we got his exact date of birth on that day.
And were you able to obtain his address?
Again, I don't think we got the exact address of where he was currently staying at the time.
The information that you did get, do you pass on to an investigator?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were trying to get his address, what did they, who were you trying to get that from?
I think we were trying to get it from the caller, Regina, at the time, if she knew where he lived, and then I think the stepfather also, if he knew his last known address.
Did they know how to get there?
I believe they stated they did not. I'm not sure.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'll pass the witness.
Defense.
Thank you. Deputy, you have your report in front of you, is that right?
I do, yes.
Okay. And I know you said you were training at the time, right?
Yes, sir, I was.
Even as training and as time goes on, you know how important it is to make sure your reports are detailed and accurate, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you may have to come into court and testify years later, so you need to make sure that those are accurate, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the closer in time, typically the closer in time you can speak to an individual about an incident, the better their memory is going to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you guys are speaking to him. I say him. You're speaking to Jesus a day after the alleged incident, right?
I don't remember exact day, but
Okay, you're speaking to him pretty close in time. Is that fair?
that's fair.
And basically, you make the initial report. You call a supervisor to see if you need to do anything else while you're there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. If they say no, you give your report and it goes to the investigator whose job it is to follow up.
Yes, sir.
And in this case, it was Investigator Salazar. Is that right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you talked about the demeanor of Regina and Jesus. They weren't crying hysterically or anything. Is that fair?
That's fair. No, they were not.
And if you remember, when you're talking to Regina, is Jesus playing basketball in the front yard?
I don't recall. I know he was standing in front of the garage. I know he was playing basketball after. I don't
Okay.
know about before.
Okay, after. So at some point. All right. And because you're talking to the family outside the house, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you ever go inside the house?
No, I do not.
When you radio to supervisor or an investigator, does anyone reach out to you to tell you to try to collect any physical evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. And again, that's not your call as whether to do that or not. But in this case, you were not told to do that.
That's correct.
All right. Now, again, you say you talked to Regina and you talked to Jesus. Do you remember talking to that third individual?
I do not. No, sir.
Okay. Do you know if you guys got his name or identifying information?
I do not remember. No, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you talked about the follow-up. Basically, when you're leaving, you give the family information and resources. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you talked about the hospital. Is that for a SANE exam?
Yes. At that for this call, yes, it was.
Okay. And Regina told you that she didn't want to have a SANE exam done. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. And at some point, do you remember saying, we'll file, you telling them, hey, we'll file it, there's going to be a warrant out?
I do not remember.
You don't remember that?
I don't. I remember hearing it on the video, yes.
Okay, so you don't remember it, but you did say that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, obviously, when we're talking about a suspect, especially in this type of case, it's important to get as much detail and information about that suspect as possible to help your investigator, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and on your police report there, it says involved persons, and it talks about Raymond Alejandro, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's where you would put the information that you're trying to get about Raymond.
Yes, sir.
And I say you and the other deputy with you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you talked about you weren't sure, didn't remember about a date of birth, but you actually did get a date of birth or have that in your report, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talked about the address, that they didn't have an exact address. I mean, you guys, did you ask them for a telephone number for Raymond?
I believe my partner asked some general questions on trying to locate his information.
Okay, that would be one of the general questions you're taught to ask, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you believe, in this case, you believe that happened.
Yes, sir.
All right. And obviously, we don't see a telephone number listed, so no telephone number was given to you.
That's correct.
All right. We also have things about email. That there's no email listed on there, is there?
No, there's not.
Okay. And again, that helps. If the supervisor tells you, go talk to him, or at the very least, it helps your investigator later to have all that information, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I mean, in a case where someone is suspected of something like this, it's important for either yourself or the investigator to contact that suspect at some point, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass a witness.
State?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Defense counsel was asking you about your statement about a warrant. What did you mean by that?
I just mean that once we pass the information to our investigators, if they determine that they need to follow up on any more information, they'll handle the incident accordingly.
And so it's not you that would ever issue a warrant?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is that something that would be decided later if the investigation called for it?
Yeah, if the investigator determines that any probable cause for an offense occurred, then they would issue their side.
Right, so at this time on the scene, you wouldn't know if a warrant was going to be issued or not?
I would not know.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Now, you clarified what you meant, but what you said is, we'll file the case, there'll be a warrant out. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Now you're clarifying what you said. So what you meant to say was, after a full and thorough investigation where the suspect is contacted, if there's probable cause, then we would file a case. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Pass a witness.
Any further questions?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Your Honor, no further questions from the state.
All right, is this witness excused?
Your Honor, we would ask that this witness be subject to recall.
All right, you may step down. State, who's your next witness? Yes. All right, everyone, we're going to take a break at this time. These are my instructions to you. You're not to think about this case outside of this courtroom. You're not to do any research. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom. You're not to discuss with each other what you've heard in this courtroom. I'll let you know when it's time to begin your deliberations. Does everyone understand? All right, so I'm going to give you all a break and we'll come back at 3:50. Is that enough time for everyone, or 3:55? All right, so I'll say 3:55 at the latest. Everyone, please rise for the jurors. State, call your next witness.
State calls Sergeant Rachel Salazar.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so everyone can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
Yes, ma'am. My name's Rachel Salazar.
State.
Thank you, Judge. Sergeant, I think this is an obvious question, but I do have to ask for the record, how are you employed?
Yes, sir. I work full-time with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
And what is your current position with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
I'm a sergeant assigned to our Internal Affairs Division.
And how long have you been working for BCSO, Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
I believe next April is going to be 22 years.
And how long have you been a sergeant?
July will be 2 years.
And then before being a sergeant, you hold any other positions?
Yes, sir. Before being promoted to sergeant, I was an investigator in our Criminal Investigations Division, specifically our SVU Child Safe section.
And how long were you an investigator?
6 years, sir.
And then before the 6 years, what other positions did you hold?
During those 6 years, I specialized and I was assigned to child safe specifically. So what I did was I investigated physical abuse, sexual abuse, online solicitation, and trafficking of children.
So I do want to touch that in a second, but before that, were you a patrol deputy before that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And
many-
prior to that, I worked in the jail.
Okay. So what does one need to go through in order to become an investigator?
So I guess everybody's journey is different, right? But essentially, my career with the sheriff's office started when I was about 21 years old, 21, 22. I worked in the jail. I did work all 3 shifts while I was in the jail, but I did spend the majority of my time on second shift, which is our busiest shift. In that time, I became a corporal. Then I joined our CERT team, our special emergency response team. There I was often a CERT team leader. At that time, and we still unfortunately are woefully understaffed. So at that time, I also had the additional duties of, there were times where I was acting sergeant, even acting shift commander certain times. After I spent approximately 10 years in the jail, I decided that I wanted to do something else. And to be completely honest, my goal had always been to go out to patrol and go into law enforcement. So what I finally decided to do was test for law enforcement. I went out to law enforcement. It's essentially, you take a written exam that covers Texas Penal Code, CCP, the Transportation Code, some Health and Safety Code, Family Code. Additionally, we also have to know policy and procedures. So you take that exam. Depending on where you score on that exam, you're given a we call it an IRB, it's an internal review board. It's essentially a presentation, like an oral resume presentation. Depending where you fall on that, that's where you get promoted. So I was actually promoted on our first round. I believe I scored number 3 on that particular test. Went out to patrol. I was on patrol for about 2.5 to 3 years. I did patrol both East Patrol and West Patrol, second shift, and then East Patrol I was on first. At that point, I decided, you know what, it's time to move forward in my career. I spent a lot of time in the jail and I probably should have been a little more productive. So I decided to take the test for investigator. The requirements for that test are a particular amount of college hours and or a degree. You have to have 2 years of active law enforcement patrol experience. You can't just say, hey, I'm assigned to law enforcement and I just serve paperwork all day. So you have to have at least the 2 years of patrol experience. And again, you take a test based on sheriff's policy. The test for investigator is a little bit different. I believe when I took the test, we focused a lot on our policy, which covers investigations, our policy, which covers execution of arrest warrants, search warrants, different types of writs of attachment, things like that. Our policy on not only the execution of these types of warrants, but, you know, when we're going to generate those types of warrants, different types of identification techniques that we use on the street, things like that. Additionally, the state law, again, Transportation Code, CCP, Family Code. And it actually was more heavily, it was more heavily geared towards our penal code, CCP, that kind of stuff, right? So after that, I promoted, I believe I was number 2 on that list, and I promoted right away. During our training, I wound up having being called out at 3 o'clock in the morning for a case involving a sexual assault of a child. And in that time during my training, they felt that I would be a good fit for that position, and that's where I stayed.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that it's a comprehensive process to become an investigator within the
Absolutely.
County Sheriff's Office. So I do want to talk to you. You said that you were assigned for 6 years with Child Safe. What is Child Safe?
So Child Safe is the local children's advocacy center here in San Antonio. They are a third party. They're considered a neutral party, but they do facilitate communication between law enforcement, child abuse doctors, things like that. And they help, essentially Child Safe's mission is the healing and restoration of child victims. It also focuses on healing and restoration of the family. They want to be able to move forward with these kids to be able to say that they have not had an experience, whether they're the actual victim of some type of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, or they've witnessed some type of traumatic event. Their goal is to facilitate that child's healing, their family's healing, and get them to move forward in a productive way.
Does Child Safe conduct any forensic interviews?
Yes, sir.
So what is exactly a forensic interview?
So I'm not a forensic interviewer, but I did sit in on at least one forensic interview for every case that I ever worked. And a forensic interview is an interview that is conducted by, and it sounds repetitive, but a forensic interviewer who is employed by Child Safe. All the forensic interviewers that I ever worked with, they have an incredible amount of education. Most of them had their bachelor's degrees and were working towards their master's if they didn't already have their master's degrees in social work. But these interviewers go in and they basically allow a child to express something that has happened to them, something that they have witnessed, some type of traumatic event, and they allow the child, they're able to question a child, to communicate with a child in a way that adults do not normally communicate with children. And they allow that child to have their own voice and share their experience in their own words. And it really gives you, it brings to life that child's experience, because we're not inserting ourselves and our own opinions into what we think may have happened.
And who is part of those interviews?
Can you rephrase it for me?
Who is part of those? Who's present to the interview?
Sure. So in the actual room for the interview, you're going to have the forensic interviewer, and then you're going to have the child victim or child witness. They're the only two who are in the room.
And is the interview recorded?
Yes, the interview is recorded.
Why is it recorded?
Well, for several reasons. Number one, as an investigative party, we receive a copy of that interview and we can go back and we can basically recall what the child said in their own words, right? Because we're human. And when we go back and we rethink or we try to consider, what I remember, sometimes those things are a little bit different, right? We remember things a little bit differently than what was actually said or what actually occurred. And this prevents that from happening, because we can go back and actually review what the child actually said. We can see you can see the expressions in the child's face as they are describing an event, and you can see the change in the child's demeanor. So for investigative reasons, mostly.
And is this done as a way to avoid re-questioning the child?
Absolutely, yes.
If there are any clarifying
Mhm.
I can't hear you, Council. If there are any what?
clarifying questions. So,
I didn't hear the response.
I said yes. I said absolutely yes.
so you mentioned earlier that you've observed these interviews. Does the room consist of a window, or how does that happen?
So there are some advocacy centers here within Texas that do have the window where you're observing just on the opposite side. However, Child Safe here locally in San Antonio does not have that type of setup. The setup that they have is a video recorded room, and directly across the hallway is another room, an observation room. And there was a large TV or high definition monitor where you could see 2 different views in the room, and we had audio. So we were able to actually observe the interview, hear what was happening.
So during your 6 years working with Child Safe, how many interviews have you observed?
Countless, sir. I can't give you an answer. A lot.
Would it be more than 100?
Absolutely. More than I care to admit. Yeah.
Are you, were you familiar with the forensic interviewers that work, in child safe?
Yes, sir. I worked with them daily.
So I think just really quickly, so I think during COVID, there were some, adjustments that were made in, the child safe, interview process, right? What were the two changes?
So due to COVID and COVID protocol, and I don't remember the cutoff age, but at a particular age, the younger children, our younger children would come in for a forensic interview and they would still be within the same room as our interviewer. However, they had a large plexiglass screen in between them.
Slow down.
Sure,
Could you please start at, they would be in the same room?
sure. They would be in the same room and there would be a large plexiglass screen in between the child and the interviewer, and they would both be required to wear masks. Now, for the older victims were essentially, the setup was similar to what we would have done as the investigative parties. We had our child victim in the actual interview room, and then the interviewer would be in a separate room, and then we would be in a separate room, normally our office, and the interview would be conducted over Zoom. So the interviewer and the victim or witness would be able to talk and communicate and see each other. We were there observing, but we weren't actually on the screen. The child could not see us on the screen.
And this was during the COVID protocol, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
I think, okay, so that's regarding child safe because you have personal knowledge since you work there. Can you give us a little bit of an idea as to, as an investigator, how do you start working on a case? How does it come to you? The most common way.
Sure. So the most common way we receive our cases, and this is different depending on the agencies, but with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, we were required at Child Safe to have our radio on, and we monitored our radio. So as calls would come out, if there was a call that necessitated an investigator, the patrolman, traditionally speaking, the patrolman is going to contact their supervisor, the sergeant on duty, and say, hey, I have this incident. They'll describe whatever offense it is being reported. And the sergeant will tell them, okay, go ahead and contact CID. Specifically speaking, if it involved a child, any type of physical abuse, sexual abuse, online solicitation, trafficking, neglect, those kind of things, it would normally be a child safe investigator. So they would contact us over the radio. At the time, I don't remember how many of us were assigned out there. At one point in time, there was only 3. I believe now there's 4. But essentially, you would have somebody monitoring each channel and you would key up. So if you key up and you got it, that's your case.
So when you were an investigator, what was your caseload like? How many cases did you have for yourself?
We had, our caseload at Child Safe was, it was an incredibly large caseload, and it's a little disturbing to say that. Our caseload was so large, I would just say that they utilized our caseload to justify more positions in CID.
Did you investigate a case against Raymond Alejandro?
Yes, sir.
Would having a copy of your report help you in refreshing your recollection?
Absolutely.
A document, do you
Yes, sir.
recognize this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you please tell us what it is?
Sure. This is basically my portion of this offense report.
Perfect. Feel free to review it, read it to yourself, just don't read it out loud because it's hearsay, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So you received information about a case. The address is in Bexar County, right?
Yes, sir.
What's the date in which you received the initial report?
I believe that would have been February 22nd of 2021.
Okay. February 22nd, okay?
Yes, sir.
And how did you get information about this case?
So what I recall is that it was basically the scenario I described where we had a patrolman who requested contact with an investigator.
Okay, and at this point, does the investigator from Child Safe typically make the scene, or how do you make a determination as to when to not make the scene?
Right. So depending on the actual offense, that would determine whether or not we make the scene. Usually for acute cases where there's going to be some type of physical evidence that needs to be collected, we're going to make that location. If it's a case of maybe an indecency with a child where we just have touching, no penetration, no bodily fluid, so to speak, then we're most likely not going to make that location.
Did you receive any information as to when the offense occurred?
Yes, sir. So if I remember correctly and looking back, to the best of my recollection, I believe that the offense occurred, I believe it was on the 21st and also on the 22nd. It was 2 incidents of abuse, of reported abuse.
Okay. So, the 22nd, you mentioned that's when it was reported, but
Yes, sir.
I just want to refer you to the second paragraph on the page. Just wanted to make sure we get the dates correct.
Yes, sir. That would be February 21st.
Okay.
Mhm.
And in this case, so did you make the scene?
No, sir.
Okay, did you give any guidance to the officer as to what to do?
Right. So usually what I do is I'll tell the officers, regardless of whether or not I believe that there was, or regardless of whether or not there is a reported penetration or any type of bodily fluids or anything like that, I always advise the officer to tell the parents or guardian of the child, usually our outcry witness, that if they'd like to take the child to Children's Hospital of San Antonio, CHOSA, for a SANE exam, they're more than welcome to. I tell them to provide them the nurse at the hospital with the case number, and that way they can get the process started on a SANE exam if they'd like a SANE exam.
And in this particular case, was there a SANE exam?
There was a SANE exam, yes, sir.
Do you know the date as to when it was performed?
I believe it was on the 23rd.
Okay. And aside from the SANE exam, what other investigation was conducted in this case?
We would have done the forensic interview.
So when it comes to the forensic interview, you're talking about child safe, right?
Yes, sir.
So in order for a forensic interview to be scheduled, is that something that the parents do or does law enforcement do?
So the parents do not do it. What normally happens is, I can't remember the name that they give the people who create the appointments, but essentially Child Safe has their own section of people who do nothing but answer phone calls and receive intakes from the Department of Family and Protective Services, CPS. And they basically document all the incidents of abuse that are coming in. That way, when law enforcement contacts them and says, hey, we have a case, they can go back and match that intake. So the people who work in that section are actually in charge of scheduling the forensic interviewers for the forensic interviewers. So say you have 5 or 6 forensic interviewers, they're not actually in charge of their schedule. They know that they work Monday through Friday and whatever hours they have, but they don't get to choose what cases they get. They don't get to choose what interviews they do. So what normally happens is the officer or CPS worker or both will coordinate and say, okay, well, you're available on Tuesday, I'm available on Tuesday. I'll see if the family can bring them in on Tuesday. Then we also contact the scheduler and they will see if there's any availability on a Tuesday for that particular family. So you have to coordinate 3 to 4 people's schedules to get that interview scheduled.
But in order for the interview, the scheduling process to begin, I would imagine there has to be some sort of referral.
Yes, and the referral does come from either law enforcement or CPS,
Okay.
which is why the schedulers are the ones who receive the CPS referrals constantly because they coordinate that to make sure they match up.
And in this particular case, so who is the complainant? Do you have the information of the complainant in this case?
Of the complainant in this case, it would have been the child Jesus Leza.
Was the forensic interview conducted in this case?
Yes,
When was it conducted?
it was conducted on March 8th.
March 8th. And this is about a couple of weeks after the report was made.
Yes, sir.
Is it common for there to be interviews 2 weeks after it's reported?
That's actually pretty fast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
Because of the workload or the case?
Because of the workload and just because of the scheduling, sometimes it's hard to coordinate 2, 3, 4 people's schedules.
Do you remember who the forensic interviewer was?
I believe that it was Benicia Hernandez.
Did she currently report with the child safe?
She's not.
Do you know why?
I do.
Objection, relevance.
Judge, it addresses witness unavailability. It's just if
All right, that'll be overruled.
Judge, it's gonna be based on hearsay from someone else.
she
What
was
they
there.
told her.
She worked.
All right, if you lay the foundation.
When you observed this forensic interview, were you employed?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay, and when did you stop being employed with child safe?
So I stopped being assigned with Child Safe in August of 2023.
Okay, was this, to your knowledge, was this before or after the forensic interviewer was?
Dionisia.
Yes,
So it was after Dionisia left.
okay. Did you know the reason why she?
I absolutely do know why.
Your Honor, may I approach with the question?
Yes.
Judge, objection, it's gonna call for hearsay and it's gonna violate Mr. Alejandro's right to cross-examine and confront that witness.
All right, that'll be overruled. You can answer the question.
Just let us know if you know why she's no longer employed.
I do know why she's no longer employed.
Can
Yes,
you
sir.
please tell us?
Yes. So,
Judge, just for the record, same objection.
All right, overruled.
so Dionisia actually had a genetic condition.
Okay, it's medical?
It is a medical
Okay.
condition. Yes,
And
sir.
that's it. I want to get into the details of that, as long as we understand the reason why.
Yes.
Okay. So, did you observe the interview? When?
I did.
When it
Excuse
happened?
me, you all are both
I
overlapping.
apologize. Yes, that's
May
my
I have
fault.
full question?
That's my fault. I apologize. Did you observe, the forensic interview when it was conducted?
Yes, sir, I did.
Without getting into the contents, right? How would you, do you recall how what was the demeanor of the complainant?
Judge, I'm gonna object, this goes into the expert of a forensic interview, this witness is not an expert.
It's based on personal knowledge, Judge, just what you remember.
All right, overruled.
You can ask.
I felt the complainant,
No, that's going to be sustained. The
Yes.
question is, what was the person's demeanor? That's the question.
okay. He was honest and forthcoming.
Judge, objection. both
That'll be
should-
sustained.
and,
Ladies and
request
gentlemen
for
of the
mistrial.
jury, denied. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll disregard the witness's last answer. Does everyone understand? You're not to consider that whatsoever. Does everyone understand?
Can I clarify the question, Judge?
You can ask the question.
So when it comes to demeanor, I'm just referring us to how did the person appear, body language, was the tone, was there any emotional reaction? That's what I'm referring to. If you remember, I know it's been a while.
I do remember. I don't want to use the wrong adjectives, but that being said, he was forthcoming.
Judge, objection.
Sustain.
I'll move on just from the question. So the,
Judge, it asks to strike that answer.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you're to disregard that last answer. You're not to consider it whatsoever. Does everyone understand?
Request for mistrial.
Denied.
so the, may I proceed, Judge?
Yes.
The interview, the forensic interview was conducted, so at this part, the investigation is still ongoing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is the next step that you take in the investigation?
So after a forensic interview, what we normally would do is if there were potential other witnesses or other people around, we would also bring them in. If they were children, they would also come in for a forensic interview. If not, we would interview whatever other adults may have been present at the time. And if that was not the case, then the next step is to try to contact the defendant.
Okay. So on the so do you know how many people were present on the scene when the report was made?
I believe it was on scene.
On scene.
On scene when I was contacted by the deputy who responded. The victim was there. I believe the stepfather was there and also the victim's mother.
Okay. And did you reach out to the complainant's mother for a statement?
Yes,
Okay, were you able to obtain a statement?
I believe I was eventually able to obtain a statement.
Okay. And what do you mean by eventually?
That statement was not given until after the completion of I apologize. So yeah, the statement was not given until after the completion of the forensic interview, and I didn't actually obtain it until after May 6th, when I sent her a text message.
Okay, so you reached out to mom with the text message, is that when she got back with you?
Yes, sir.
Did you schedule an appointment with her?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and do you remember where you obtained this statement?
I don't.
And what kind of statement was it?
It would have been an outcry witness statement.
Okay, but is it verbal, is it written, audio?
Usually they're written.
Okay. So what about the stepdad?
So I did not interview stepdad.
Okay, and why not?
Well, because he was not the outcry witness.
Okay. So from my understanding is if the witness is not the outcry witness, then you don't collect any statements?
I would have collected a statement, say, for example, our child victim had said, hey, he was present in the room, maybe when this happened, or he saw me get up and run away, or something along those lines, because he could attest to, he could kind of corroborate what the child was saying. Normally, we will interview and get a statement from the outcry witness because they're the first adult, first safe person that this child makes this statement to.
So the first adult
Absolutely.
at that very moment? Okay.
Yes.
So at this point, you have the information from the complainant and the family. Is that all you do in this case?
I mean, we try to get the defendant to come in for an interview.
Okay.
Sometimes we're able to do that and sometimes we're not.
Is as part of your investigation, and based on your training and experience, is that a common practice
For me, it was, yes, sir.
for you to obtain the suspects, in this case, the defendant's statement?
Absolutely. At the very least to attempt it, yes.
Okay, so what attempts did you make here?
So I remember trying to collect a phone number from him. I remember enlisting the assistance of another investigator just to kind of do some background digging. She was particularly good at searching through maybe social media type stuff.
I guess before you move forward, I'm sorry to
Sure.
interrupt you, but what information did you have of the defendant when you received the case?
When I received, I'm sorry?
The case.
The case. The information that I had about the defendant was that he had been living with this family.
I guess let me clarify, what contact information?
Yeah. So he had been living with his family, and after this incident, he left and nobody knew where he went. Nobody could provide an address, a friend's name, a phone number. There was nothing.
Okay.
There was no forwarding information, so to speak.
Okay, so because you didn't have very much information, the next step was to do a background check.
Essentially,
Okay.
a clear check.
Can you elaborate more on what that consists of?
So we utilize a system called Clear. It's essentially, it's similar to what you can get online if you're going to do a background check. You're trying to do like an online public information lookup on somebody where you pay, $5 for the subscription, and what they do is they get all of your.
Excuse me, could
Yeah,
you slow down?
Yes, ma'am, I'm
Thank
sorry. They get your information from various credit bureaus and just kind of put it together, and they say, oh, well, I believe, Jonathan may be related to this person, and they just kind of give you kind of a bunch of information that you have to kind of filter through and see what is relevant and what is not.
Right? Did you, after you conducted the investigation, did you find any information, any leads to lead you to him?
No, sir.
Are there any other attempts that you made to get a hold of him?
I do recall trying to attempt contact with his mother, but that was also unsuccessful. And this has been several years, and I don't want to misspeak, but what I do know is that there was no contact made. I was essentially told he's not staying with any of us, don't know where he is, we think he's with a friend.
Okay, so you have the report,
Yes, sir.
you viewed the forensic interview,
Mhm.
you spoke with mom or obtained her statement. You made attempts to get a hold of the defendant without success.
Yes, sir.
At this point, then what's next?
Well, I mean, at this point, I need to decide whether I'm going to proceed with this case and send it over to the district attorney's office so they can look at for potential prosecution, or I close it out on my end, whether it be, man, I can't remember what we used to call it. But we close it out essentially that we needed more information or that there was not enough information to proceed.
In this case, was the case submitted to the district attorney?
I did submit this case, yes, sir.
So, going back really quickly on the SANE exam, why was it, do you know why a SANE exam was obtained?
So in working these cases, even when there's not an outcry of penetration or penetrative sexual abuse, I would always tell the deputy to make that option available to the family. Number one, it helps the child feel better knowing that their body is being checked. Number two, sometimes, a child may feel comfortable making a disclosure to mom of A and B. And then when they get to the nurse where mom is not in the room or dad's not in the room, they say, hey, you know what, mom, you know what, nurse, this other couple of things happened to me. And they make that disclosure because they want to know that their body is safe. Additionally, this particular victim is a male, and our male victims, it's common knowledge and through my training, we learned that male victims of sexual
I'm gonna
abuse.
object. I think this is outside the scope of her testimony. I'm not sure she's an expert on.
All right, you want to lay the foundation?
So you stated earlier that you worked for 6 years as a detective and you worked with how many cases?
Hundreds of cases, sir.
Hundreds of cases. And these cases consist of,
Physical abuse, sexual abuse,
Okay.
online solicitation, neglect, trafficking of children.
and in these kinds of cases, it's common for there to be a SANE exam as part of the investigation.
Absolutely, sir.
And through your training and experience, do you receive any, or as an investigator, do you receive any training and experience on these cases?
Yes, sir.
How often does that training occur?
So as part of my training and my assignment at Child Safe, I not only took and am certified as a sexual assault SAFIC investigator, so the sexual assault victim investigator. Additionally, I did attend the Crimes Against Children's Conference in Dallas annually. And during those trainings, we discuss SANE exams, whether they're going to be acute or the delayed SANE exam. We discuss what we're looking for during those exams. We discuss potential evidence that is collected during those exams and injuries, possible injuries that we may see as a result of penetrative sexual abuse, and also just manual sexual abuse as well.
You learn about different genders and the disclosure.
Absolutely.
And as an investigator, did you work on cases where there were male victims?
Yes.
So this was not the first case?
No.
Okay. So throughout your training experience, this was a male victim. Why did you recommend the same exam?
Because statistically speaking, males have a lower rate of disclosure.
Judge, objection. This is outside her scope. I don't think she was even given to us as expert notice. This would be a forensic interviewer or some psychologist. She's not an expert in this field of study.
I'll withdraw the question, Judge. Move on. Because there was a SANE exam as part of your investigation, were you able to obtain the SANE exam records?
Yes, sir. I received the same chart.
Okay. And did that play a role in your investigation?
Yes, sir.
So looking back, or investigator, I'm sorry, in this case, is there anything that you would have done different in your investigation?
So absolutely. When I look back at this case, and I will tell you that at this time in 2021, I don't recall whether or not we as investigators had body cameras at that time. But I will tell you that moving forward, once I receive my body cam, every attempt that I make, even now in internal affairs, where I'm making a phone call, where I am knocking on somebody's door, leaving my business card, any of those kind of things, they are all recorded on my body worn camera. And I document every incident, date, time, phone number called, location attempted.
Did you meticulously document every single attempt on your police report?
So no, every single attempt is not documented here, unfortunately.
And again, moving forward, would you have made something different?
Yeah, absolutely.
No further questions, Judge.
Defense?
Thank you. And it's Sergeant now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Sergeant Salazar, the best time, typically the best time to speak to a witness or potential witness is right after the event, right?
I would not agree with that necessarily, depending on what the incident is.
Okay, you don't think that they might remember it better closer in time than months later?
So again, I'm not a psychologist. However, in my training during some type of traumatic events, oftentimes people will not open up to what occurred until they're ready to.
Okay. Would it be the best practice to try to speak to them in the beginning and then follow up as needed?
So it is not the best practice to do that for children. No, sir, we don't do that.
Okay, so for children, you don't want to get as many details as possible, as quick as possible.
Negative, sir. That's not what I meant by that. And I apologize. I'd like to clarify if you wouldn't mind.
No, I'll move on. So for children, when people go out to the scene or police officers, part of their priority, that investigator yourself or a different deputy, part of their priority is they don't want to re-traumatize that individual. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And as far as collecting physical evidence, the best time to do that is as close to the outcry as possible, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. And in this case, the deputies went out to the scene. Would you be in charge of letting them know what to collect, if anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in this case, you didn't tell them to collect anything, is that right?
Right.
And you've talked about how, well, sometimes we don't get all the statements right away. But you made the determination immediately not to try to get any clothing or bed sheets or anything like that. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Based on the child's outcry.
Okay. The statements from Regina Garza, you said eventually, because you had to make repeated attempts to try to contact her, right?
I did.
And typically, you would say parents would contact you because they want to make sure that this case is moving, right?
Right.
And this was the exact opposite, correct?
Well, in this case, yes, sir. I had to reach out to her.
Okay. And then you finally get a statement from her in May, so about 3 months after, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in your investigations, it is important, you would agree with me, it's important to at least attempt to try to talk to the accused person, right?
I do. Yes, sir.
Okay. And in this case, you were never able to do that, right?
Right.
And you stated that you had, or obviously you wanted a phone number for Mr. Alejandro, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the family, yourself and the deputies were never given a phone number from the family, is that right?
That's accurate. Yes, sir.
And you and the deputies would have reached out multiple times or asked for that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you became aware that he was on their cell phone bill, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's strange that they couldn't give you his phone number, right?
Yes, sir. I was told that they removed him after the incident.
Okay, but before the incident, I'm sorry, before they removed him or even after, they still never gave you his phone number, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. And as far as an address, you were never given an address, right?
No, I was not.
You were actually told they didn't know where he was or he's with a friend.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it wasn't, I don't know the address, but I know how to get there because you would have gone, right?
Absolutely.
All
I
right.
would have pulled up a map.
Yeah. And so you said you made repeated attempts. Were those the repeated attempts to try to get his information?
It was those attempts. And then additionally, like I said, we did some searches through Clear. There was some Facebook searching that we tried to do. I don't know that we tried Snapchat, but I know I believe we looked for Instagram accounts, things like that.
Okay. And you talked about how you would do things differently today. You would document those attempts either through body cam or on your police report, right?
Yes, sir.
But those attempts are not documented on your report,
They
right?
are not, no, sir.
And part of that is because you felt like it would lend doubt.
It wasn't necessarily that it would lend out, no, sir.
Didn't you tell these prosecutors, victim advocate, that part of it was it would lend doubt to the victim?
I don't remember saying that. I believe that what I expressed was that I was surprised that this case moved forward.
You were surprised that it moved forward.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have you all step outside for a moment. Remember my previous instructions.
All right, for the jury.
All right, everybody, please be seated. Defense, you can ask your question.
Okay. In regards to not contact or not documenting those attempts, isn't it true that you told these prosecutors and advocate on November 5th of this year that you didn't address it in your prosecution guide because you felt like it would lend doubt to the victim?
No, I believe that what I said maybe was a little bit confused because there was two parts to this. What I said was at that time, I would make my notes on sticky notes and sometimes they would disappear and move, right? They get attached to a different file, they get attached to a different case, that kind of thing. What I did say was my concern about the family would lend doubt to my victim, but I did address that and mother not responding and being responsive. I did address that in my prosecution guide.
Okay, and so part of that, I guess, would be the attempt to clarify the lending doubt. The lending doubt part is about you making contact or trying to get the contact information for
From the
Mr. Alejandro and the family not giving that to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was what I was saying.
Okay,
Now, as far as not documenting those attempts, it is because I was not at that time. There were several cases that I had where I had sticky notes that I was not sure, this note belongs to this note belongs to that. At this time, I believe, if I remember correctly, this was a time that we had moved buildings. We went from child safe at Highway 90 to child safe at Salado Creek. A lot of my cases were in boxes and on top of each other. And I'm sure as an attorney, you understand how that is. And things slip out and wind up where they're not supposed to be. And I did not want to document something
All right, so
incorrectly.
you're talking too fast.
So sorry,
All right,
Judge.
the court reporter has to take down everything that everybody is saying. So let me remind everyone,
Ma'am.
number one, slow down. Number two, speak up so everybody can hear. Because if the jury cannot hear, then what's the point? If I cannot hear to respond to your objections, then what's the point? So everyone speak up and speak one at a time. Any other questions on this subject matter?
not on that, no, not on that prosecution guy. Sergeant Salazar cleared it up the
And are you intending to ask those questions in front of the jury?
clarifying one that
I have no objections to that part. It's the part where she said, I didn't feel that the DA's office was gonna file that case. That's the part that the defense counsel elicited that I'm objecting to, and I like an instruction to disregard.
and Judge, I didn't elicit that. That was given to me by the investigator.
All right, so, and then here's the other thing. Listen to the question, only answer the question that is asked. All right? And what are you asking the jury to disregard?
Statement that she made that she felt that the case was not gonna be filed with the DA's office.
All right. All right, let's bring the jurors in.
Judge, just, what is the ruling on that? Their request for an instruction?
Oh, I'm gonna give them the instruction.
Judge, we'd object. I didn't ask that question. That's their witness that offered that information.
All right, they're gonna get the instruction that they're just to disregard the answer about whether or not she thought the state would file this case.
Well, Judge, I guess while the jury is out, I believe they opened the door by asking those questions. Okay, you submitted it to the DA's office. Okay, you thought you had probable cause. Here's what happens next. They asked those questions.
Well, we didn't ask whether or not she felt she had probable cause. We asked whether the case was referred to the DA's office, meaning what happened to the case after.
All right, can you bring the jurors in?
All rights for the jury. And DAs, please speak up. Those doctors there. No, they're not hard to hear you without the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm struggling to hear you and you're making my job very hard. It's been a long day.
Yeah, you're one down.
Oh, and just so y'all know, you can sit in any seat over there. You don't have to have the same seat. So wherever you want to sit is fine. All right, everyone, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the witness's statement concerning whether or not she thought the prosecution or the state would pursue this case, you're to completely disregard that statement. Does everyone understand? You're not to consider it whatsoever. Does everyone understand? Defense?
Thank you. Sergeant, we were talking about the attempts and they're not documented in your police report or on body cam, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I asked you a question, you clarified, so it's not the lack of documentation that would lend doubt to the victim. It was the fact that his own family wouldn't give you Raymond's contact information. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to clarify that. Now, did you document it at all during that time? Was it your course of practice as far as attempts or things like that? Did you document it on a notebook paper, a sticky note or anything?
Yes, sir. Usually I would document on sticky notes, my different attempts.
Okay, and would they sometimes get lost or it would get confusing to even know which one went with which case?
Unfortunately, yes, because of the way cases get stacked, sometimes things would move.
Okay. Now, so again, as far as contacting Mr. Alejandro, you really couldn't even get past that first start of the process. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It was a hurdle.
Okay. Yeah, you talked about a lot about child safe. So sometimes during the interview, whether in a different room, there's law enforcement or CPS present sometimes, right?
Yes, sir.
And just in general, have you had on occasion where as law enforcement, do you talk with the interviewer? So do you submit questions? Are you allowed to have some sort of input into that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you said you talked to the adults. In this case, you talked to Regina only, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you didn't talk to his stepdad?
I did not.
If someone was in the house when an incident allegedly occurred, would you want to talk to that individual?
Not necessarily, no, sir.
You wouldn't want to even know what they heard or saw?
No, because if my child victim is not saying that that person was present at the time, then there's no point in talking to that person. My concern is bringing in that child victim, getting their recollection of the events. And if they advise during their interview or during their process or their disclosure that somebody else was present at that point, we would pursue that additional interview.
Okay, so if someone is not there, you don't talk to them?
Not usually, no, sir.
Were you aware that Raymond's older brother Angel came and picked him up right after the incident?
I was aware that he left. I did not know who picked him up.
Okay, so you didn't attempt to contact, well, you didn't know who picked him up. Did you attempt to get to know who picked him up?
So the patrolman on scene asked. We did ask follow-up when we spoke with mom after the forensic interview and, in the attempts to gather this information. And I do not ever recall being told that the brother picked him up.
Okay, so you and the deputies did ask, again, you were never even given that information.
It was my understanding that he was told to leave.
Okay. You talked about the sane exam and, you know, how you guys give the option to get the sane exam, right?
Yes, sir.
Partly because it can help with recollection of an incident, also just to be safe, right?
For sure.
I mean, just as a best practice, you would advise anyone in that situation to go get a sane exam immediately, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As far as interviewing defendants, and in this case, trying to interview Raymond Alejandro, I mean, obviously you made attempts, you would have liked to interview him, right?
Yes, sir.
And again, because of the family, you were unable to do that.
Yes, sir.
As far as if I could just have 1 second, Judge. Again, in investigations, in your reports, details matter, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talk to witnesses or potential witnesses to match up those details or get the full story, right?
Yes, sir.
Um, and again, you at least attempted to do that in this case. But Jesus's family was not, I guess, as forthcoming as you.
Objection asked and answered.
You can ask the question.
Jesus, his family was not as forthcoming about information as you would have liked.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall ever asking Jesus himself if he had contact information for Raymond?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
I would not have done that.
all right. So you would, is that part of you don't want to ask too many questions?
It's not that, sir. The reason that we don't interview children on the scene, the reason that we as police officers do not speak to children, like you said, is we don't want to re-traumatize them. Additionally speaking, sometimes children don't want to talk to police officers. Culturally, they don't want to talk to police officers. You see things on TV they don't want to talk about. He certainly doesn't want to talk to me about what happened to his body, so I would not have done that, no.
And again, you're talking about re-traumatizing and police officers talking, that's, that even when the deputies go out there, that's part of their priority, right?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll pass the witness.
State.
So defense asked you, yes, just briefly, defense asked you about physical evidence, and that there was nothing that was collected, right?
Right.
And I think this was regarding also. So what evidence do you expect to find in these kinds of cases?
So this was a case of an indecency with a child, which meant there was not going to be, usually speaking, there's not going to be any type of bodily fluids. This is just going to be a case of touching, essentially.
And in this case, was there any allegation about any bodily fluid?
No, there was no allegation of any bodily fluids.
Okay.
Additionally, and I don't have a copy of the SANE chart on me, but this was reported after the incident. There was an outcry of touching over the clothing. So there was not really potentially there was not the mechanism to have that type of DNA or physical evidence in this case.
Right, and and do you know if the complainant had bathed after?
I believe the defendant had actually taken, I'm sorry, not the defendant, the victim, I
The
believe.
complainant, yes.
Yeah, the victim. I believe the victim had actually taken a shower, yeah,
Okay,
and changed clothing.
so the last instance was over the clothing,
Mhm.
he had bathed and he had changed.
Yes.
Okay, now, if there is no bodily, does the absence of bodily fluids in a touching case mean anything?
No,
Is there a requirement that there needs to be some sort of physical evidence for there to be an abuse?
no, absolutely not.
And you stated also, right, that you made attempts to contact even the mom.
I did.
Did you leave any voicemails?
I don't remember.
Okay. And you don't remember, you know for sure that you did not receive any contact or call back from anybody?
I did not.
And this is also including your messages through social media?
I'm sorry?
This is also including the messages through social media?
Right, so I don't think we actually sent messages through social media. We did searching to try to find him and find friends so that we could try to contact, and we were not successful.
So you made extensive efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when the deputies on scene. Excuse me, when they respond to the scene, you mentioned earlier, there was talk earlier about them not speaking with the child to not re-traumatize them. Do they still need to get the basics facts to determine whether there's malice?
Absolutely, and that's why our outcry witness is important and why I needed that statement from mom.
Okay, and this determines whether the case gets forward to CID,
Yes,
to investigation.
yes.
No further questions, Judge.
Just briefly, as far as the things you learned over the course, some of it's through the deputies, right? But then some of it is through later interaction, either with Regina or Jesus. Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
As far as what you learn about the allegations and the incident, some of it you learn right away from the deputies, right?
Yes.
And then a lot of it can be later on in the process, right?
Right.
Okay. Pass the witness.
Any further questions?
No further questions from the state, Judge.
All right, is this witness excused?
Subject to recall.
All right, you may step down. State, do you have another witness?
Not today, Judge.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to dismiss you today. We're actually going to come back tomorrow at 2:30. We can go off the record, and Maria, you can shut down your system.